Now let me use me as an example. When I get a client, potential client that calls up and says, Victor, we want to hire you to do a keynote speech. One of the first things I ask in my list of questions is, what's the occasion? I get called in to do a lot of sales annual events. In other words, end of year, rah-rah, or at the beginning of the year, let's fire them up, Victor, sales motivational type speeches, right? So now that I know what the occasion is, the next one is who's in the audience. Now this is important because even if you're doing a sales conference, you need to know who's in the audience. Are the majority salespeople? Do you have internal salespeople? Do you have customer service people there? Do you have marketing people? How many managers do you have? Get the idea? So I'd like to know who's in the audience so I can begin to frame what I want to talk about. Next is the number of attendees. This is important because, again, the bigger the audience, obviously, the more interaction you're going to want to have with them, and you got to be able to impact the bigger audience. Bigger audiences are always tougher because it's not as personal as a small group. So, for example, if you're doing a 50 to 100 person group, that's pretty easy to kind of interact with them and maybe do some exercises if that's what you choose to do, and we'll talk about that later. But again, the dynamics change a little bit. Now, if it's 500 to 1,000, 2,000, the largest number I've ever spoken to is a little bit over 12,000. So you can imagine how immense that crowd is, that it's really hard to get personal. So you have to find ways within your presentation to be personal. So again, the size of the audience really is important because it'll determine the tone of your message, but it'll also determine what you can and cannot do given the size of the audience. Then I always ask, this is key, what's the theme? Every event has a theme. So again, I'll give you one I got last week was, hey Victor, the theme for next year's kickoff sales meeting is leapfrog the competition. What a great theme. They want to leapfrog the competition. Victor, we want you to come in. We want you to talk about new sales strategies because our goal is to leapfrog the competition and we want you to talk about sales. Get the idea? And then here's a question. It's an optional question, but I like asking it. Did you have the event last year? 9 out of 10 times they said, yes, we did. And then I talk about who spoke last year in my place, right? I ask, well, who was your speaker last year? What did they talk about? What were some of the things that you remember that resonated? What I'm getting from the actual client is, give me some of the things that have worked and you've seen work last year, and let me see how I can incorporate them. At least that's how my brain's thinking. Now, I'm not talking about copying, of course not. I don't want to use their material, but for example, if it was a smaller group and they tell me, Victor, a lot of interaction really worked well, then I know I want to incorporate that into my keynote presentation. But if it was a large group, said, Victor, what they like is the guy had a lot of visuals. And that's what the group liked. Now I know that I want to incorporate more visuals. You start to get the idea? So these are some preparation questions you should ask yourself before developing your keynote presentation. Let's move on to the second video.